have a time machine or a teleportation device. And I'm going to caveat this. Your time machine is not going to change events in the future. You can just go back and visit stuff and whatnot, but it's not going to change the time-space continuum. Just in case that you had that question there.
Time machine with no butterfly effect or a
Yeah,
teleportation device. What are the limitations of this teleportation device
within Earth.
within Earth?
I mean, you really wouldn't want to teleport into space anyway. You're going to die, right? So,
Yeah. I always wonder as a kid, like if when I was a kid and my dad was a kid, if we were the same age, if we would have been friends. And it was kind of like this cool thought experiment, like which of us was cooler when we were younger. But maybe you don't want to know. Like imagine if you went back in time and your dad or your mum were just kind of not a nice guy, like a bit of a bully or something, then you'll be like, this is a bit awkward. You can't give them the bombshell that you're their son. Like they just won, they'll think you're crazy, and then you're not off to a good start. You're not going to be friends with the crazy guy that thinks that that you're your son. So you can't tell them that. And then I guess the butterfly effect isn't going to happen. So there's not going to be any of that Marty McFly shenanigans going on with mum. So that's probably good. Um, I don't know. Maybe some of the past stuff's better left unknown. Like if I also could speak every language, then going back in time and hearing epic speeches from lots of different historical figures and stuff like that, that would be really cool. But unfortunately, I don't think I'd even understand William Shakespeare, like people speaking my own language, let alone people speaking other languages. All of that said, I'm going to go teleportation. I would love to go to conventions and all that sort of stuff, and then just come home at night and sleep in my bed. Like, how cool would that be? You know, uh, hang out with friends in the US or in Europe or wherever for the weekend. Like, there would be no need for Zoom. Like, someone messages me saying, "Hey, can we talk about game design? Maybe I've never met them before." I'll be like, okay, sweet. Where do you live? Or where in the world would you like to go? Let's meet up in Paris for a coffee. And neither of us are from Paris. So teleportation sounds absolutely sick. Have I won you over?
maybe.
You don't speak to the future at all, Sam. Like, would you not want to travel into the future?
It's possible that that would be hopeful, but it's more likely that it would be depressing, right?
The pessimist. All right.
Is there like the negative butterfly effect though? Like if you go to the future, you see what could be, and then do you have the power to change it or not?
I don't know.
These are deep questions, like philosophical ones about how time and all the physics
And
behind
free
time and
will,
stuff.
determinism.
Yeah.
3 hours later. You'd think that I'd want to go back in time, like to see all these historical places and events happening like in the flesh, to see the Roman Empire and go way back to the Greeks and all that stuff. But we kind of romanticize these eras in today's culture, right? Like we look back on the Vikings and think, oh, these awesome warriors, but you would not want to encounter them in real life if you were the enemy. So as much as I think I'd want to go back in time, I reckon it would be such a brutal time to exist in, like just people getting killed and living in like terrible conditions. So we have it so good in today's culture, relatively to what they had it. So I don't think I'd want to go back in time, really, like if I actually knew how it was going to be. But if I could go back as a fly in time, just buzz around and have a look, then I would definitely want to do that just to like see it for myself,
100%.
But yeah, we've talked about the teleportation before, about that versus like, was it free travel? I think we talked about free on the airplanes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, teleportation would be amazing. But with what you're saying, Sam, about like just popping in and stuff, like going and seeing a friend, like there's got to be some limitations, right? Like you don't want some random person just popping up on your front doorstep out of nowhere or in your lawn or in your house, like because they just use their device. That's kind of getting a bit creepy at that point. So does everyone have this device? Is it just you? Like, can you go anywhere, or is there like an A and B point?
No teleportation zones. You have these kind of like these force fields around your house so that no one can port into it. There might just be like spots where you could port in and out.
All right.
I think if you went back in time, one of the things you would find out is that something that isn't overrated is plumbing. Like plumbing is just so OP.
Yeah.
Like, gone are the days of us needing to squat over a little hole and then cover the hole in and move away.
Yeah, I think the thing about going back in time though is that we both romanticize it and then also underestimate people in the past because people like the Romans had like underfloor heating and they had like plumbing. I mean, obviously, probably depended how rich you were because if you're living in kind of their apartment buildings, you probably didn't have the plumbing. But there's a lot of technologies that we kind of don't realize were around in certain empires, and then sometimes they weren't around after that because the empire imploded. But that could happen to us as well. I mean, we could go into like a Mad Max like thing, and it would have been better in the past. So I think my answer is pretty easy, and it's a 3 for 3 on teleportation because half of my family, my wife's family, is in Italy, and I lived in Italy for 10 years, so I've got so many friends there. So it would be pretty sick just being able to be like, oh, bro, yeah, we can catch up this weekend. It'd be a bit difficult with the time difference. Okay, I'd just jump over in the morning to go to the pub with my friends or something, and then jump back and you know,
True.
it's
Good call.
yeah, it'd be a little bit awkward having like a massive Italian dinner for breakfast, like. But no, it'd be amazing. I think anything in the future that can reduce the time that it takes to travel around the world would be amazing. There's talk about like planes that go into the outer atmosphere and travel much faster and then re-enter and stuff like that. That would take like a few hours basically to get around half the world. So that sort of thing would be pretty sick if we get to that point and it's affordable,
That's a big caveat.
I might change my answer, but I need a question first. This
Yeah.
time travel device, do you show up exactly the same like location, or can you choose your location on Earth?
Wait,
Yeah, I was
wait. You're
thinking
trying to
that.
combine the two, man. That's not
No,
allowed.
just a question. Am I showing up in New Zealand? Like,
I was just thinking that, yeah.
We're just stuck in this like forested area. If you go anywhere past kind of 1200 AD, like there's just a bunch of flightless birds trying to run you down. Like,
And giant eagles, basically.
New Zealand was like even like 500 years ago. So like, who knows? There could be volcanoes going off and stuff. Because
Yeah.
if I can choose a location, right, I'm just going back to Gen Con like 2 years ago. Like that's where I'm going in a heartbeat. Like there would be places I can go that you guys can go in today that I can just go like a year ago. So
I see. Yeah, I feel like that's a bit of a hack. But in saying that, I feel like I also answered the time travel question with the assumption that it could go somewhere, anywhere as well. That's typically how they tend to work, right? It's time and space travel.
Let's just say no, but it's portable, so you can get on a flight, go to where you
Alright.
want to go, and then activate it. Okay, that way we're not integrating the two.
There we go. Yeah.
I'm still gonna switch. I'm gonna go to time travel because it's not all like thousands of years ago. You could go to last week,
It's a good take. It's a good take. You could relive the best moments over and over again. There was a day. There was actually. It's funny that you mentioned Gen Con 2 years ago because there was a day of that Gen Con 2 years ago where I told my wife at the end of the day, if I could relive this day over and over again, I would. Like it was just so good, hanging out with friends, great food, great games, good banter. Yeah, those kinds of moments are amazing. I had this thought a while back, and I think it kind of fits in with this conversation. If you went back in time, say, let's just say about 30 years ago, where board games are a thing, purchasing board games is a thing, but like it's not as big as it is today. There's not as many games coming out and all of that sort of stuff. How many games, maybe not how many, but are there games that you could completely design that you've played, that you've memorized enough of the game that you think you could design the whole game? And could you pick one that you would choose to like pitch to a publisher and just say that it was yours? It's like that whole Beatles thing. Have you seen that movie where there's a guy who remembers the Beatles and everyone else forgets that they existed, and then he starts writing their songs and getting famous and stuff like that? Which game do you think you could design, and why? Which one would you pitch? Yeah,
Straight away, the mind. Boom.
easy. Yeah. Would you throw out the shurikens or would you leave them in?
I don't know, you could leave them, but that's the easiest one to remember. Like all the rules. I might not get all the right amount of lives, but
it's got to be Pandemic. I think it has to be, right? It's like one of the biggest innovations in modern board gaming and has had the most impact on modern board gaming. Like it's spawned off so many co-op games, and it's a gateway game that's just perfect for a lot of people.
And it would be opportunity to put New Zealand on the map as well. Just slightly tinker with the geography a little bit. Yeah.
Fix the wrongs that were made. Yeah.
I think I would know enough to remember like games like Coup or Love Letter and completely design those. Just One would be a very easy one as well. I wonder if that was actually the first instance of that game or if it was kind of a known sort of activity party game. I've heard people saying they've played a similar game to Just One before, but that was just put in a package and sold. So Just One might be my pick because it seems to go down well with everyone, including non-gamers. But then I might actually find out that it's not that original.
Welcome to the Lens and Veil podcast. Join Shem, Sam, and Zach as they dive into a designer-focused analysis of Civolution, a game from Stefan Feld.
So today we're going to be talking about the behemoth that is Civolution, a sandboxy Euro game designed by Stefan Feld. Now, a bit of a caveat with this game, there are so many different kind of mechanisms and mini games and systems in the game that we are going to miss a lot of them. This is not going to be a comprehensive discussion about every aspect of the game. Instead, we're going to be talking about things that stood out to us, things that we thought were really interesting from a design point of view. So I'm going to attempt to do a little bit of an overview of the game, but I'm sure that I will miss different aspects, and that's going to be fine for the purposes of our conversation. So the game is played over 4 rounds, but the rounds are kind of not what you would expect. They start off kind of how you would expect. We've got some phases where players draft some goals and they get some resources for free and things like that. But then we move into the action phase. And in the action phase, players are going to keep taking actions and it's going to flow really nicely. They're either going to take a dice action, which is where they use 2 dice, and the dice values are going to determine what the action is. Now, there are a possible 21 different combinations of dice, and there's a 22nd action which just uses any 2 dice. So there's a lot of different combinations and permutations of what all of these actions are. But players will use 2 dice. So say if I use a 4 and a 3, there'll be a specific action which uses a 4 and a 3. In this case, that is the planning action. It's called planning. Then the next player will take their turn and we keep going around. On your turn, instead of using dice, you might have used up all your dice, or you might have values that you don't want to use. You could instead take a reset action. When you take a reset action, you collect all your dice that you've spent and any dice that you want to reroll. You reroll all of them. You put the dice back into their available area, kind of sorting them by their value. So you might have rolled 3 6s. You put all the 6s on the 6th spot. And then we move along the phase tracker. The phase tracker is going to determine how long the action phase is going to take this round. And once it gets to a certain point, we will finish the round and have 1 more turn each. And then we will go through all of these little cleanup steps at the end of the round before we start a new round. The cleanup steps are going to do some weather events. There's a card each round which will impact the weather, which might mean we gain some boons or have some negatives. There's going to be an event also which will kind of give someone a bonus for having the most of something. It'll give players direction throughout the round, but it's only resolved after the action phase. There's a feeding phase where we've got workers on a map. We need to feed all of those workers. The ones we do feed will score us points. The ones we don't will be weakened and they're not going to score points in future. They will also need to be stood up later on to be able to use them. And then, we get some income and all those sorts of beautiful things. All right. So what are we doing? Why are we doing all of this? Well, we're trying to score points. I think loosely the theme is around kind of building up this civilization that is evolving and getting better. Is that right, guys? What was the theme?
The theme was that you're actually like intergalactic at an intergalactic academy for like world creation or something like that. And so you're doing your exam. I think it's something like sci-fi-ish. And so you're on this like world that you're manipulating, basically.
Yeah, cool. So I'm just going to cover a few of the kind of the notable concepts and actions that you can take. So remember, there's 22 different actions, and so I'm not going to cover all of them. There's quite a few actions that will give players some form of luck mitigation, some dice manipulation. So, increasing dice by 1 and setting aside a token to be used as any value die and things like that. But players are going to be getting these goal tiles. You can get one each round, but then there are also actions where you can pick up a goal tile. This is going to give you direction for things you can do. But once you have fulfilled that goal tile, you need to also take an action to complete the goal. When you complete a goal, you get to flip over a tile, any one of these 15 tiles that have a different 2 dice values to take that action. You get to flip it over and you get to improve that action. So you might improve the production action, which was a 3 and a 5. Or you might improve the procreation action, which was a 2 and a 5. Each of these actions can be upgraded twice. So they can go from level 1 to level 2 to level 3. And it's quite cool. It's on a recessed player board. So there's a tile in there. The first time you flip it over, and the second time you upgrade it, you remove it. That's going to make that action more powerful each time you take it. So doing these goals is great for improving your actions. You have this massive player board that is called your console. And it looks to me very much like a periodic table, if you know what that looks like. And so there are all these different slots for tucking cards. There are 5 different colored cards, but there are also chips that are the same width as cards. Once you have tucked a particular type of card in there, it might have a cost, it will get you some bonuses and stuff like that. You have now set the color for that column. And so all cards or tokens that are tucked in that column must be that same color. But there's a cool thing on the console that the cards at the lowest level are worth 2 points, and the next level are 3, and the next level are 4, and you can even unlock scoring for the 4th and 5th levels at 7 and 10 points. So the more you do, the more points you get, and they get stronger and stronger. But you can choose to tuck at a higher level from the start and just lean into these higher scoring conditions, but the cards themselves will cost more to put at that higher level, typically. There are also cool bonuses for finishing off a row. And so the bottom row is a little bit easier to complete. And then the next row is a little bit harder, and so on and so forth. So you might want to go low, score fewer points, but get the bonuses for completing the rows. There are some wild tiles, which are income tiles, which will generate income every round. But you can actually tuck those on any column. So you can use that as sort of any color, which is great. There is a map on the table, which houses a whole bunch of different regions for players to explore. But unlike normal exploration in games, you can actually see the whole map from the start. Your meeples are going to start in 2 different regions, and on these regions you can build buildings, and you can move around and explore new regions. Each region will generate a unique type of resource. And so you need to explore the whole map to have access essentially to all of the different resources. The exploration in the game is quite different though. Players could move around and go to lots of new spaces, and they don't need to explore to go there. But when you do explore, it's going to sort of augment or alter all of the surrounding regions in that area. There's these kind of like exploration tiles placed in between all the terrain. So we could be right next to a volcano for the whole game and not know about it. And someone might reveal it right at the end of the game. And when we find out that there's a volcano there, then the buildings next to it get destroyed and things like that. So it's exploration that is non-essential, but it's something that players can lean into. So a lot of the different actions will score you some points throughout the game. Also, at the end of round, there's going to be points for your workers and some other things, shrines placed out on the map. So at the start of the game, we have 4 tiles that get placed out, 1 for each round, which are going to give extra scoring for players each round. They will score you for progress tracks or people on the map or resources held in hand, things like that. There will also be 3 of these tiles placed out in the in-game scoring area, which will buff the scoring conditions for particular tracks or resources at the end. So there are 5 progress tracks. They're each going to be worth 1 point unless they're buffed for every step that you've moved up that track. You're also going to score points for your feature markers, which are kind of like these resources that you don't usually spend, which are kind of like DNA and stamina, intelligence, composure, things like that. You're going to score points for resources. You're going to score points for all of your tribes, all of your workers out on the map, and also unique regions that you are in. So you're going to score a lot of points from lots of different areas, as well as scoring points for your console, where all your cards and your tiles are tucked at the end of the game. There's really a lot. There's so much that I've missed, but that should be enough for us to have a discussion about the game. So the first thing I want us to talk about is the dice. So there's this dice action taking system, which I've explained, where you're going to use a pairing of 2 dice. And that means that there are 21 or 22 possible actions that you can use the dice for. And so it seems like it's really, really versatile, and also with the mitigation and stuff. But was that the case in practice? How did you guys feel about the dice?
So we had different experiences, right, from game to game. So some games, your dice just kind of land in a way that's beneficial and you can work around them. Perhaps you don't use 2 now and then and you just rest before you've used them all. Or you might have just the right amount of mitigation coming in passively. And in some games, you're like, man, these dice just will not roll the right numbers for me. I think my second game, I was like, I could just not roll a 1. Like, please let me roll a 1, and I couldn't. Like, there is a good thing with a game where you can wrap 1s to 6s. So there is not this extreme of like, if you don't roll 1s and you're always rolling 5s and 6s, it's not a mission to get down to a 1. So that's very good for the game. But a lot of what I feel, a lot of the experience you're going to get is going to be a bit swingy on the dice. So you might have an amazing game and really enjoy it and go, this game is fantastic. It's so good because everything worked out well. And then your next game, the dice might just be against you the whole time. And you suddenly realize, I don't know if I like this game. Like that's the kind of extreme feelings it can produce. There is definitely some area of skill that's going to flatten it out for you, I think, where when you understand that the dice are swingy, you can prepare for that, right? Like an experienced player would not be so much, I guess, at the mercy of the dice. But I do think it's worth knowing that for your first couple of games, at least, like you could be very different experiences based on the dice rolls.
I'm in kind of 2 minds about the dice, because when I go to design a game, there's that thought of like, oh, I could have a cool puzzly mechanism to choose the actions. But then sometimes it's like, is that even necessary? Because maybe the puzzle's in which actions you choose. So this game's got so many possible actions and so many possible things you can do. It almost feels like unnecessary having that puzzle there. But then I'm in 2 minds about it, because on the other hand, there's so many things you can do that actually how you roll your dice gives you direction for your round in terms of what you can do. So it actually brings that massive set of actions that you could do down to a few possible ones according to what you can reach with your dice numbers. So I'm at the same time like, I think he could have just left it open and you could just choose. But then again, maybe that would be a bad experience for first players who are like, there's way too much to do. What should I do? I don't know which action to pick because I could do a million different things. So yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of ambivalent here. I don't know where I land.
So let's circle around that point and talk about it maybe higher level in general. So you mentioned games that have these action-taking systems or subsystems or mini games. So many games do this. And in fact, we do this in a lot of our games. Like we did a series of games in the South Tigris where you can't just pick your action, do your action. You've got this whole dice system in each of the games. They're different each time, but you've got to use your dice in some way or another to take your actions. Why do we do this in games, Shem? Why do we put in these little puzzles or mini games for action taking? Why is it a good thing?
Well, the alternative is that it's just an open field, right? There's no blocking, there's no restrictions. And like Zach kind of alluded to, you have no direction so much, or that if you have your own inbuilt direction that you've produced for yourself, then you can do whatever you want and there's no tension. So going even higher level, like we know that life can be hard and there are things that come against us that are struggles and we battle against things with whatever might be in our lives. And, you know, when we come through those things, we feel like we've accomplished something. And so in a board game setting, when you have a bad like restriction that feels punishing, but somehow you figure a way around it and you overcome it and you do well in the game, it's a good feeling. So restrictions like help in a lot of ways because they pull down your decision space, they give you direction, but also they give you something to overcome. And board games are about overcoming. They're about like winning and doing better and improving. So I think without them, it just becomes, I don't know, just too much, or it's just, there's not that satisfaction because if you played the perfect game, it's like, well done you, but what were you up against? What was the adversary that you're kind of overcoming? So yeah, it's an interesting one. I personally enjoy having restrictions in games. for the reasons I kind of already mentioned, but also a bit of chaos in games is nice, where it's not just like 100% known information. There's a little bit of randomness thrown in there just to keep the game fresh and keep it exciting, because I find games where they're just like everything is known, everything is there for you, and you can have whatever you want, kind of underwhelming, because I want to feel something in the game.
And I think that's kind of interesting, and I agree. And it's like, who is the adversary, right? I think that's a really interesting question, because I had in my mind, as you're saying that, Shem, a game that me and Sam have made, which is upcoming, and can't talk too much about it because we haven't announced it yet. But where you tested it one time, Shem, and we had a puzzle, and you're like, this is unnecessary. And it is a game where the adversary isn't the game, the adversary is the other players. And it's very much about like, how can I maximize the efficiency of my action to then do better than the other players, right? And so I feel like that's a key concept. Like in a game that has higher interaction, sometimes the puzzle gets in the way of you interacting with the other players. In games that don't have as high interaction, if there isn't that puzzle, it doesn't feel, yeah, you don't feel that tension, or, oh, I need to do this, but I need to also do that. So yeah, is the adversary the game, or is it the other players? Maybe when it's the other players, you don't need the puzzle as much. Would that be fair?
Yeah, I think so.
I agree. I think you're both onto something really, really interesting, and that is that we need to have restriction in games. And one of the best places to put it, typically, and in lower interaction games as well, is with the action-taking system in itself. Other games like Gaia Project, which are there's decent amount of interaction, but not insane amount, they pretty much just say, hey, take whatever action you want to do. But where they put the restriction in is how many resources that you've got. So they act as the gate, as the kind of tension that you're pulling against. But this game here uses dice in this way. And I also wonder if one of the things that we like about this is that it's a puzzle, and it's a novel puzzle, like going back to a high level again. So I think with puzzles for humans, we want them to be fresh and want them to be new. If it was like talking even just about a jigsaw puzzle, there's probably not many times where you would finish a jigsaw puzzle and mix it all up again and solve it again. You'd want to solve something that's fresh and something that's new. And so when a puzzle is introduced for an action-taking system, I think it needs to be something that feels fresh and new and novel for the human to be like, oh, this is exciting. I haven't figured this one out yet. So that players can get this sense of mastery over a system, and that can be quite satisfying, this kind of new puzzle to solve. But are there times, and I'm sort of alluding to this when talking about this game, where there's a downside to putting in an action-taking puzzle? Are there what's the cost of doing something like this? Are there times when it gets in the way? When can it be bad?
I think with any restrictive system, there's always a chance of frustration for the player. Like every time. It might be a card drafting game and you just need that one card to show up and it doesn't show up. And you just feel frustrated because you feel like it was a luck thing, right? Like it wasn't a lack of skill or planning. It just didn't fall the way I wanted it to fall. And you talked about Tier Mystica and Gaia Project with the resource spend restriction. The thing with Civolution, it's actually got all of that stuff going on. There's not just the dice restriction. There's the card restriction. There's the resource restriction. There's so many things that are restricting you in this game. So even if you did have the dice removed, it would still be like, oh, I need to get a piece of peat or a stone, or I need to get that right feature piece so I can place this card down, or there's other things going on. And I think the frustration can kick in when it's not that you don't have those things, it's when the dice don't land the way you want. Or when you do need, say you need to get some oil to build this building, might be, or whatever it is, and your dice roll in a way that you just can't get that oil, or you can't find that oil on the map because it's going to take so many steps to get out there and get it. The game does have some nice systems in place to kind of lift you up, which I like. So there's this free resource at the start of each round based on the terrain you're in. So you know from the very start of the game, at least in the classic game that we've played, the intro game, as you call it, where you start in the forest and the grasslands, there are 6 resources you have access to for that free resource. So that's nice to know that they have baked in the system of you can't get oil. Well, we can give you one, like at the start of the round. If you really want it, you can get it. That's cool. But there are 18 resources, right? So these restrictions are not just the dice, it's all these other things kicking in. So that's what I was sort of saying earlier about how, like, if the dice fall in your favor, you don't even notice that restriction at all. It's like, oh, it's just a fun puzzle I'll work around, and I guess I'll do this card, not that card, or whatever it is. But when you're feeling the restrictions of dice and of the other things compounding, it feels worse, I think.
I wish we could ask Stefan Feld like what came first, because I think probably playing the game I was like, oh, you wanted to make a big expensive game, but I wonder like when you talked about the puzzle and having a novel puzzle, whether his first idea was you have two dice and I want a different action for each possible combination of numbers. Because that's what it is. It's like any combination of numbers does a different thing. And then whether that then led to him making the game so expensive because he had so many combinations, so he had to find a way to have a different action for each combination. It does very much feel like maybe the dice are the heart and the core of it. So my question maybe would be, it's barking up the wrong tree to take away the puzzle of the dice. But maybe some of those other restrictions weren't as necessary. Like there are how many resources?
18. And if you include gold, if you include the features, we get in the 20s. Yeah.
Yeah. So many restrictions. So I wonder if maybe easing some of those would have alleviated some of that possible frustration. It feels like in some ways the dice is the heart of the game. I think you can look at it from two ways, but I do wonder if that's how the game came to be, was starting with that, like, I need a different action for each combination of dice.
That would definitely be my assumption. Just looking at it from a game design point of view, I'm sure that thought of like, can you do two dice and the combos are actions, has probably floated through a lot of minds over the last few years. Like, this could be a thing. And we've seen it in other games with like color mixing. We've done it with scholars. We've seen other games that mix, like when you have different colors they can mix or different values they can mix. So it's not like the most like, oh, how did you ever dream that up? It seems quite an obvious thing, right? But I think you're right. It's probably, okay, I need to think up 21 actions. What are they? Like, the game is a big sandbox, and there's so many things in the game that you won't touch when you play on your first, second, or third play. So it almost needs 18 resources to kind of keep that sandboxing alive. And there's just like, I've never built a statue in the game. I've played it 3 times. I've never built a statue. There's things I have not done. So like, I don't know. It's a funny one. Like, I really enjoy the game, but I do know that a lot of the experience weighs on the roll of the dice.
Yeah, and I want to loop back around to that sandbox idea really, really soon. But before we do, one thing I want to say that is really cool, and when I see this game explained, it gets me excited from the start, is with those 21 actions, 15 of them are the different combinations of numbers with no pairs. Each of them having the tile that you can flip over and then remove to upgrade. That is catnip to me. Like, I love that. Let me like lean into one action that I can make better and better and better. And also the feeling that I can never upgrade all of them. You would never do enough goals. You'll never get enough opportunities over the course of the game to flip all of them over. So by the end of the game, you've got your own custom action board, which is better in some ways, worse in some ways than Gary over there, And I think that's really cool. And it makes me want to explore what all of these actions do and how they feel. However, I'm not so sure that each of the actions needed to be upgraded twice, because a lot of the actions themselves have like a slash through the middle. They have a big do this thing or this thing. So when we're using this number 21 or 22 actions, really, if you count all the slashes and the ors, there's more than that. And sometimes you flip a tile over and it doesn't buff the half that you want it to buff. You have to wait to remove it to buff that half. And it's kind of like, I just want to get started quicker. I just want to feel more powerful faster. And I have to flip this thing twice. Where am I going to get this other flip from? So I'm not so sure that each of them needed to be upgraded twice, but it is quite cool to go flip it over and then remove it from a production side of things. I don't know. That's quite fun.
I think also they can be a source of frustration in the game as well, when you do make an effort to flip or remove a certain tile and then you just do not roll those dice values. So you have leaned into a certain path and then the game's like, no, you can't have that path, sorry. You're going to have to do something else. That's, I guess, will compound that frustration as well. If you weren't upgrading, then you'd just be at the mercy of the dice and you wouldn't feel like you've invested and then can't benefit from it. I was thinking about it earlier, like, So in the game, there's two forms of mitigation. Okay, there's one that's just Sam mentioned it. It's a token that can be any dice value, and then there's other I think they're called ideas, which you can up or down a die when you spend an idea. I would almost have preferred. I think we talked about a bunch of ideas of this when we were playing it. And after we played it a few times, of how we might make it. Well, just to be honest, the mitigation is there, but it feels a little bit weaker than we'd like, and that maybe that's just a preference thing. But I wondered if maybe like the better mitigation would have been more like a Wayfarers type thing where there's just this inherent fours can be threes or fours can be fives and maybe that comes from those flipping those tiles. So I don't know. I think I may have preferred something like that where there's a whole aspect of the game which is about buffing your mitigation in a way that's like it's baked in. It's not a token you get. It's like, oh no, now my sixes can be ones all the time. That would have been, I think, a bit better.
I agree. I kind of wanted more incidental mitigation. Like, do this action, get this thing that I'm wanting to do, but also as a side effect, I get one token into this area, which allows me mitigate on future turns. So there's some really cool sequencing considerations. Felt like I wasn't getting that much feedback from my actions. And I had to, in order to get a lot of ideas or focus, I had to take an action in itself to do that. Now, as a min-maxer, as someone who likes to also play the dice that I've been rolled, this is something that is very hard for me to do. I don't want to take an action just to give myself plus or minus dice in future actions. It took me to my third game before I actually took an action that would allow me just to get ideas. And it's actually really strong. Like, it's really OP, but I had to sort of work against my natural instincts playing the game to do that. And so for me, I would have just found it more fun if I got more of these kind of just as happenstance, just get them kind of from doing other stuff.
To be fair, some of those do exist. Like in the first game, I got one of, those tiles that you get if you have a bunch of those features, those feature tiles, and you lose a feature and you gain the tile kind of thing. One of those tiles let me do the planning action, which is actually the third type of mitigation, which we didn't mention, which is you can do this action, which just allows you to place down your little markers on certain dice numbers, and they count as a dice of that number. So it's a third thing after the focus and the ideas. There's this planning thing where you basically just create fake dice on the numbers that you prefer. So this tile allowed me to do that action, and when doing that action, I could tuck a card of two different types, either one type or another type. And so there were a few tiles that allowed you to do that, but I think having something more baked into, as Shem was saying, let's say the actions, like when you upgrade the actions, they become more flexible. Or first of all, there's a lot of those sorts of tiles, so they might not even come up, the ones that help you with mitigating dice. And it also felt like you had to go out of your way to get them. And they were definitely powerful when you had them, but it wasn't kind of like something that would naturally happen.
So it's an interesting discussion around, we've talked about trade-offs before, where if there were more little benefits along the way, like I do this thing, I get this card, and also I get this thing, and then this thing. Like if those things happen more often, you'd actually be losing what is really great about the game is that the turns are really fast, like really quick turns. You just do little small actions. But the problem is that you then have, like Sam was saying, if you take an action just to take a better action later, it feels like a wasted action. So, but the good thing is that it's going to be your turn again in about 30 seconds. So it's a weird thing, where the turns are really small and they're quick, which is great. But then you want more from your actions. But then if they were more, then the turns would be slower and the game would bog down a bit more. So yeah, it's a fine line.
I want to come back to this word that you used, Shem, sandbox, and to kind of land the plane where I ended up with this action-taking puzzle, which I tend to like in games, but I did feel like the action-taking puzzle undermined one of the core strengths of the game, what the game wanted to be, and it undermined the sandbox feeling of the game. Now, you could say that was intentional, like Zach's point, sure, that potentially is intentional, but for me, they're fighting against each other, whether this is a restrictive, tight Euro game or this big old sandbox where the player is told, hey, go and explore, do whatever you want to do, try out this system, have fun. And I think these two things are fighting against each other, and I'm not sure which of the two is the strength of the game, but I don't think they're helping each other out, if that makes sense. what do you guys think of with the sandboxing nature of the game? So we played it several times. There are some actions that Shem has said I haven't done. Shem said he hasn't done. I haven't done. And how do you feel about that? Is it a good thing? You could play the game and not even do half of the different actions. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? What are the trade-offs with a system like that?
I think just generally speaking, it's a great thing. Like that the game has so much breadth and so much variety from game to game. Like it's given you so much to play with, right? And like you say, in repeat plays, you can just explore something completely different. So like that is not a negative in any way, I don't think. What the restriction is doing though is trying to guide your direction, which is pulling that sandbox down. I think where it falls apart a little bit for me is that it's not like you're really getting put into a path. It's every time you roll your dice, you're getting thrown a whole new set of paths you can go down, and they don't always synergize from what you've been doing on your previous turns.
100%.
So,
Yeah.
where it's like it's not really like narrowing those choices in a way. It's narrowing those 21 choices every time I roll my dice. Whereas I'd rather like slowly narrow, and then I've got this point towards the end of the game where like these are the three things I'm always doing, and I'll keep doing those three things till the game ends, which is what I would prefer. Like you can see that in a lot of our games where, say, Ezra and Nehemiah, you have like, all right, I'm going heavy into walls this game, and then towards the end, you're like, I have to build a wall every turn. I'm doing it, and I'm focusing. I'm ignoring the temple entirely, and that's the kind of gameplay I prefer, where I'm choosing a path and I'm intentionally ignoring stuff. Like I will choose not to touch it. Maybe I should, but I'm going to try not to. And it's me as a player choosing my path, and the game will fight back and will push against you and say, no, you have to do this thing and all that kind of thing. Whereas this one, it's that whole every time you roll your dice, you're back at the start. Yes, you have some progress in areas, but those dice might not be beneficial for where you want to go, what you were planning for. But as I've already said even earlier, like it's a thing of once you know the game well enough, you will probably know how to work around this. You'll probably find ways to prepare for it, and it won't be an issue anymore.
So this makes me think also about, what I said earlier and what Shem said, that probably the dice system was what led to the rest of the game. But I don't know. This could be completely wrong. Maybe taking the dice out and making it free for all in the action. I mean, obviously you'd have to change the game under quite a few aspects, but it potentially could lead to a more enjoyable game. Have there been games in your guys' career of designing games where the core concepts which led you to create the game actually needed to be taken out before you finished designing the game?
Yeah, plenty of times. Plenty of times. And I think when you're first designing, like it's very important to know that you should be able to do that. Every step of development, you should be willing to kill the thing that led you to the thing that you're at now. So, I mean, Scarab Bray is a real obvious one. We talked about it on a previous episode where it started out as a tile laying game, turned to a big card heavy game, and then went to wooden resources. So, like the interface was never sacred in that game. I knew what I wanted the game to be in the sense of like what you're doing in the game, but how you were doing that, and especially in a tactile way, how you're doing that, changed at least 3 times quite significantly. So it's really important, especially if you get to a point where in a game you're like, it feels like it's at a standstill design-wise, like you've got to a point, but it's not where you want it to be, but you don't know how to proceed. I think that's when you start going back and you go, hang on, what can I rip out? What have I been so like careful to keep? Like what parts of the game have I not touched? I guess if that makes sense. I never tweaked those cards or never done that thing or changed that thing or thought, does it have to be worker placement? Can I change that system? I think it's important to go back and go, let's try something different. Let's just spitball it, right? Like you don't have to actually physically change the game and test it, but can at least consider like maybe this core piece that I thought was amazing isn't actually amazing. So yeah, it's really, really important, I think, in game design to have that in mind. I'm not saying that I agree that this game should remove the dice at all, but it's a good discussion about other games that it's worth considering, I think. Even further along in the game design, it's worth considering.
Yeah, 100%. I think the example you used before, Zach, is a game that I kind of think of, but I guess that wasn't the core conceit of the game. But Shem's totally right. You have to be willing to let go of things that the game wouldn't exist without them having been thought up, but maybe they have surpassed their usefulness, like they're just no longer useful anymore, and they're holding the game back from becoming what it really wants to be or needs to be. So I want to talk more about the sandboxy thing. Let's throw the dice away. Just talk about the sandboxy thing in isolation. It's kind of interesting that you could be taught a game. You could be sitting through 20, 30, 45 minutes of teach. I don't know. Can be quite a bit to go through, and know that you're not going to do half of the stuff. Now, that sounds like a bad thing, but is that a bad thing? How do you guys feel about sandboxiness in games? And why do you think designers design games that are sandboxy?
Yeah, definitely hard to teach. That's like the big negative, eh? So, I mean, as soon as you're talking about that stuff, I was thinking of like Hadrian's Wall experiences where watching Bobby teach the game and then he's talking through all the things on the right sheet, knowing that most players won't touch that thing.
Yeah.
Like but you feel like you have to teach it, right? Like if I don't teach it now, then I'm going to be teaching it throughout the game as you ask questions about that thing I didn't teach you about. So
Don't mention the gladiators. Don't mention them.
yeah, exactly. You just did. But to this game's like strength, all the systems are quite simple. Like if you want to build a building, it's not that complex. They're little things to do. So it's definitely doing a good job of making those many systems easy to teach. There's just a lot of them. That's the downside. There are a lot of things to teach. But I don't know if it's too hard to retain. It's hard to say because I'm not I'm an experienced gamer, if I can say that. No. But like for a new person, this would be, I think, so overwhelming. After 10 minutes of teaching, you're like, I'm done. I don't know what you're talking about anymore. I have no idea what a tribe is or what a statue does or what my boat can do. Like there's so many little things that you have to know about. So this game is going to reward repeat plays, which is the thing that we generally like at Garphill. So like this is definitely in our space of the way to design a game. But yeah, the plus side, I think, of a sandbox game is that the repeat plays are amazing and there's so much depth to explore and different paths to go down. The negative is always going to be the teach. I don't think there's any other negatives. Maybe direction, like players not having direction, but that's something you can figure out in many different ways how to bring that about. But really it is that teach is going to be killer for some people.
Yeah, for me, I think the nice thing about sandbox games is the exploration and the replayability, because both things are related. It means I can go back and play the game a second time and be like, I want to try something new this time. I want to see if this works out. I think in this game, like, you have a bit of direction in terms of the final scoring and the round scoring, but especially the final scoring. So if certain tracks are scoring 2 points instead of 1 point per number you go up them, obviously you're going to be wanting to prioritize going up those tracks and tucking those cards, etc. Or if the tribes are scoring more, you're going to want to prioritize having more tribes on the map at the end of the game. So there is a little bit of direction in terms of point scoring, but I mean, the game is massive to explore. One trap I often fall into, though, and I don't know if this is the same for other players, is that I'll go into a game being like, all right, I'm going to explore something different about this game this time. And then I just end up doing the same old stuff that I do the first time because I don't know, it's just like what I'm drawn to inside the game. So for example, in this game, the first game I was like tucking cards, getting lots of those features and tucking the cards, using those and using mutation to move my features around and lots of stuff like that. And I hardly touched the map and the tribes and whatnot. The second game, I'm like, okay, this game, tribes are scoring more. I'm going to go for the tribes. I'm going to try and build and do tribes. And then I just ended up tucking cards again, like for the whole game. And I was just like,
yeah.
Why?
I think that's actually one of the underrated things about games with multiple paths is not just the coming back to it and trying out a different path, but because you could come back to it and try a different path and other people might be doing that, you can do the same path again and you can gain mastery over that. Like you can get better and better and better at doing that thing. Debt collecting in Architects is one example where I just kept trying it until I figured out how to make it work. And that was really satisfying as a player. Like I was coming back to the game and doing the same thing again, but because not everyone is doing that thing and because by necessity you don't have to do that thing, it felt like an area where I could level up and explore more and more and more. And I think that's a strength of asymmetric games too. Like after playing a game like Chaos Order or a game like Sidereal Confluence or something, you could have turns. You could look at that other person and think, wow, I want to do that thing. Or you could be like, wow, there were some real challenges for this faction in this area. They have pronounced strengths and they have pronounced weaknesses. I want to learn to lean into those strengths and learn to kind of mitigate those weaknesses more and more and play this faction again and again and again and sort of main them like we would in a game like League of Legends, maining a character, getting better and better, learning the ins and outs as to how they work. So playing this game again was something that was exciting to me. The prospect of playing it again, because one, I could do stuff that I already done and do it better, or two, I had more and more things that I hadn't tried out. And I think that was the reason why we're doing this podcast in general. Like if it was just off my first play, I don't know if I would have wanted to play again if I knew the experience was going to be exactly the same. But the game has so much promise, and it says, hey, there's more under the hood here. There's more that you haven't seen. There's more to explore. You haven't seen half of this, mate. So it's always kind of appealing, the thought of playing this game again. Even though I have issues with it, still I'm like, oh, there's more to discover. I kind of want to try it again, see what I've missed, you know? How do you guys feel about that, the replayability of the game?
That's exactly it. Where it's like, on one hand, I'm like, oh, I want to play right now, and the other hand, I'm like, but do I like? Do I like the game? I don't know. But it's a really weird thing. It's probably a good analogy for it in food wise, like something that you find you just really want to eat that food, but then you just know that it's got this weird aftertaste or something that like kind of makes you go, did I actually enjoy that? I'm not sure. So it's an odd one for me. I generally really like the game quite a lot, but then also there's certain things about the game that I'm like, oh, I don't want to experience that again. Like it's a really weird one. I think the sandbox is doing a lot of that. It's creating a lot of that feeling where there is so much that you can do that I don't know. It's really odd one to explain as well. I'm struggling to explain the feelings behind it, but yeah, it's a funny one.
I think it also looks exciting as well on the table. It looks like there's so much to explore. I don't know. I don't know if you guys understand what I mean. Like when you open it up and you're at the table and you're like, you see all the actions and you see the map and all the places that haven't been explored that you can turn over. Like you get this feeling of like, oh man, there's like so many possibilities, and that kind of makes it exciting to get into. So I wouldn't underrate like the visual appeal of how everything looks to like someone who loves sandbox games and loves to explore.
Yeah, I think coming back to what I was trying to explain, I think the part that makes me have that distaste in my mouth afterwards, it's kind of what you're getting at too, Zach, with the whole like, I want to explore, but you end up just tucking cards. Like that's kind of fall into old traps. It's that mixed with the mitigation issues I have where like I look at the game like, oh man, I want to play this and I really want to try this thing. But then knowing that I could commit to playing the game and not do that thing is like disappointing. Like, do I want to spend 2 hours playing a game doing a thing I didn't want to do? Like it's a really weird, odd thing. But
every game you play, you're stuck with that same old gamer yourself. And you want to try and play a game without that gamer yourself, you know?
Yeah, I can give an example from the second game. Like I got like basically 2 upgrades in the first round. I completely upgraded Explore, but then Shem had also done that and he explored like a whole bunch of places before me. And then I think I did the exploration once in the game. I was like, oh, that was a waste of 2 upgrades because I just like didn't really get around to doing it any more than that one time. So, you know.
It's funny. You guys have like, in a way, you've got a similar thing to me. But so my instinct is there's something that in a game that I don't want to do. And your instinct is there's something that you want to do. So for me, it's like, I'll try any of these paths. I want to try any of these paths, but I'm not going to take an action where I'm going to get mitigation. I'm going to ignore that. I'm not going to do that. It's like bad min-maxing or whatever, bad sequencing. It's a waste of a turn. Whereas you guys are like, I'm going to do this thing because this thing's cool. Like I'm just drawn to this thing.
Especially when exploring a game, like the last game was the one that I moved around a lot and flipped over tons of those tiles. And that was intentional. And fortunately, the game let me do it. That was the thing. Like if you can choose a path and the game allows you to do it, then it's quite enjoyable and really fun. But if you're like, all right, this turn, I'm going to do all my statues. I'm going to put statues everywhere. And the game's like, no, you're not. Then it's really frustrating. So the game has this weird thing of like, there's so much potential, but it's like on a knife's edge. Like this could be the best game or the worst game ever based on what the game gives you to work with.
I'm sort of resigned to the fact that we're not going to be able to talk about everything in the game, but I do want to ask each of you, what's one brilliant thing? It could be a small thing, it could be a big thing. What's one really cool thing from a design point of view or just a play point of view that stood out to you with Civolution?
Just one thing.
Yeah, one thing, just one thing.
Out of the bazillion things this game
Yeah,
gives
one
you.
thing that was just like, yeah, this stood out. I need to mention this.
I will maybe just say one thing that's not one thing. But it's well, there's the thing I do like about the game, I think is very clever, are the little subtleties of the game. There's a few little things it does that are very clever and they cover many sins, I guess you could say. One was the thing I talked about earlier was it gives you a free resource to your player board at the start of each round. It's a real subtle little rule that really helps you a lot. Another one would be when you do take that reset action, you basically get this little token on your playboard, you slide it down, and it becomes either a idea, which is mitigation, or a food. It's just one little thing,
Yeah.
or three things. So
And it runs you through all the steps on the rest as well. Like
yeah,
it kind of does a double use. Yeah.
there's a few things like that in this game which are just really subtle. They're not even hard rules to teach, but they help a lot. Like they're doing a lot of heavy lifting in terms of sort of smoothing off the game.
Well, two little things. One is kind of related to what Shem said that just made me think of it, is the fact that you have those little markers and you use them for everything. Like they're basically your statues on the map, they're your resources on the map, they're all your resources on your board, they're all the money on your board, the food, they're those sliders for the rest phase, like just kind of the way that there's so much stuff, but at the same time it's components light in a way. Like it could have been so much worse in terms of components. But the main thing I wanted to talk about was the dashboard, above the dashboard, the whole like tucking cards, goal tiles.
Yeah. The console.
Sorry, the console. I think it's really clever, the whole scoring thing. And I mean, people have done it, scoring, like you tuck more stuff, you get more scoring. Even you guys have done it in a recent expansion, Body of Books. But the way that it is built, that the lowest level is below, but you can also place stuff on higher levels. So you can be like, I want to complete a row and unlock a income tile, but I'm really only going to tuck one of these brown cards. So what I'll do is I'll put that on the second level because I know that I'm going to do more of the other stuff. So I can get the other stuff up 2 levels, but I'm only going to do one of those brown cards, you know? So I love that thing, how it's kind of like indented in the middle. So in the middle, there's like 3 or 4 spaces that you can go up like 5 levels or something, you know, and then there's like one space or whatever that you can go up 4 levels. So I'm not remembering exactly how many levels there are. I thought that was really clever, and obviously that was the main part of the game, right? Found myself tucking cards and trying to score stuff there, and so I really enjoyed that. It was cool.
Yeah, the console is rad. Like it is such a cool idea. The shape of the player board allowing for these different rules. And you might be looking at a card thinking, oh, I can afford this at the 3rd level, so I'm going to tuck this at the 3rd level because it's going to get me 2 more points. But then I'm not going to finish that 1st level as early as I want to, so maybe I do go at the lower level and I don't use these resources that I've got that would allow me to score 2 points. It's great. It's really cool. I love that console. I'd love to see it in more games. I would love to see that kind of thing in a game where it was a little more combo based. You know, when you tuck a card, you get to pick up another card, or more ways of just getting cards straight away. Because again, as a player, I don't want to take an action to just pick up a card and then take an action to play a card. Like one or the other. One of them being a free action for me would be really nice. But as Shem said, a real strength of this game, and I'm going to lean into this one, is the flow of the game. There's micro turns, and it's just really, really smooth. For a game that has a lot of rules teach, there's a lot of stuff you can do, you would imagine it's quite brain burny, and at times it can be, but I think we would only be in the tank like 2 or 3 times a game, just thinking about our turn. And most of the time it's like you got your next 2 or 3 turns planned, because you do have that scope to plan ahead. And so it was just smooth and buttery. Like it would just go around the table really, really nicely. So I value that a lot. A game like Architects has good flow, and this sort of felt similar for a much, much heavier game. So that's quite the feat. And so a lot of my issues with the game, where players could get more stuff, the downside of that is actually it would impact the flow, as Shem mentioned. So yeah, that would have been quite the cost. The other one thing I wanted to mention was I don't normally like games where you roll a die and see what you get, and then you might get stuff based on the value. But this game has that kind of system, and I think it does it in a cool way, where you've got these pink dice, and there are a bunch of actions which will make you roll the pink die, and the value that you roll will determine kind of what you can do with hunting, with production, things like that. But you can collect more and more of these pink dice. And so you can kind of build up your mitigation of bad luck in that way with just having a whole bunch of pink dice and rolling them, and you're just going to pick one value. But you can also bump along this track, which is going to change your success rate for some of those rolls as well. So I thought that was quite a cool thing, where you don't have to get more pink dice. You can just roam around with one pink die and be at the whim of whatever you roll with that. But if you want to lean in and collect more of them, it was just kind of fun. Like you're just kind of master of your luck a little bit more. So I thought that was a cool system that could be used in other games as well.
We hope you've enjoyed our discussion about Civolution, but we'd love to hear from you. Jump on the Garphill Games Discord and let us know on the podcast channel if you've played it. Do you enjoy the action-taking mechanism that uses dice, or do you find it frustrating? What makes you enjoy a sandbox game? So, for the final segment of our podcast, we're going to do something new. And what we're going to do, guys, over the next 20 podcasts, we're committing to it, 20 podcasts, we are going to do an ongoing snake draft. Now, what is the snake draft going to do? The snake draft is going to be drafting each podcast one game from 10 of the games in the top 200 of Board Game Geek. So this podcast will be drafting from the games number 1 to number 10. And then next podcast, we'll be drafting from 11 to 20 and so on and so forth. And obviously, we'll be trying to select the best selection of games, better than the other two in the podcast. But there's a little caveat, is that the person who is third pick each week gets to ban a game. So no one will get to pick that game.
So we've randomized it, and I'm going to be first pick. Zach is going to be second pick, which means each time he is second pick. And Shem this week is third pick. So Shem and I will alternate between first and third pick. So we'll start with Shem with a ban. Should I mention what all the games are in the top 10?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So we've got Brass Birmingham, Pandemic Legacy Season 1, Ark Nova, Gloomhaven, TI4, Dune Imperium, Terraforming Mars, War of the Ring 2nd Edition, Star Wars Rebellion, and Dune Imperium Uprising.
Yeah, this is a tough one because if I take out something that you actually want, you might take what I want. So, it's a tough one. But to ban something, I'll just take a shot and say I don't think there should be two Dune Imperiums in the top 10. So I'm going to ban the original Dune Imperium.
There we go.
I don't know if you guys are going to choose it. You probably weren't, but let's just put it out there anyway.
I like it. You're
Nice.
it's a ban from your standards. You don't want the standard.
Moral ban.
Yeah. I mean, you're allowed to do that. You're allowed to use that ban that way. So I'm first pick. Wow. So there are 3 games that are fighting for this. I'm just going to tell you my thinking because I don't care. Once I've picked, you can take whatever I wanted. So there are 3 games that are around a similar level for me and games that I really, really enjoy. And they are Pandemic Legacy Season 1, Gloomhaven, and Terraforming Mars. And so Terraforming Mars is actually going to be the one that takes it purely because it's the game that I want to keep playing. Now, unfortunately for Pandemic Legacy Season 1 and Gloomhaven, I finished both of them. So they kind of deserve more credit than what I'm giving them. They are both fantastic games, great campaign, legacy experiences. Really enjoyed my time with both of them. But Terraforming Mars is the game that I will keep playing. I really love the card play. I have warmed to some of the flaws of the game over playing it lots and lots of times. You kind of just get used to the take that elements in the game. And it's a game that really all of my game group enjoys. So having games that my whole game group enjoys are very, very valuable to me. So Terraforming Mars will be my pick.
All right, so this week is actually easy for me. I don't think all weeks will be easy because I've played a lot less games than Sam and Shem. But this week there's a game that I know that Sam and Shem did not enjoy very much, but I enjoy a lot. And I've only played it once. I didn't even finish the game, but it was just such a good experience. And I would love to have the chance to play it again. But it's kind of hard to get it played. And you guys can probably guess what the game is. And that's TI4, Twilight Imperium 4th edition. And it's just like so up my wheelhouse. Like, I mean, the combat probably is slightly more random than I prefer, but I just think the drama of the game is just like, it's there for me. Just kind of the table talk. I just loved some of the table talk of like, come on, trade me a resource, and if you take that, I'm gonna attack you here, so don't attack me. Like all that kind of like banter and then the massive ship battles when finally a battle would happen. So TI4, I know I'm going to get a lot of people on side for that because there's a lot of faithful TI4 fans out there. And so that's my pick for the top 10.
Will we have 3 out of 3 space games?
No, we will not. I've got 110 on here. I've got
Yeah.
2 8s. Sorry, 3 8s, 4 7s, a 6, which Zach loves apparently, and one I have not played, which is just a copy of a 7. Let's put it that way. I have to go with my 10, right? I have to go with the 10. There's no argument about it. There's not even a 9 to choose from.
If you draft this pick, does that ban you from all other picks with the similar name?
What are we talking about? I don't know.
No. Okay. All right.
Maybe, but is this the ultimate version of that game? I think it is.
There we go.
I think it is. So I'll stick with well, now I might change my mind that you said that.
No. It's not a rule. It's a made up rule.
All right. Pandemic Legacy Season 1 for sure. I have played it twice. I'm that kind of nerd. But it's just so good. It's brilliant. But yeah, up there for me was Terraforming Mars as well, obviously. I considered like banning that one because I knew Sam would take it, but then he might take my Pandemic, so I couldn't have that happening. Also, Brass Birmingham is brilliant, but it's also not my like favorite wheelhouse to play in, but it is a great game.
Yeah, it's a brilliant design.
Star Wars Rebellion is brilliant as well, but I've only played it once, but it
Yeah.
was a great game to play.
Agreed.
Yeah. So I think there's 2 games here that could have topped Twilight Imperium, War of the Ring, and Star Wars Rebellion, which are 2 games I haven't played, which I'm sure I would absolutely love. But not having played them, I opted for Twilight Imperium.
They are both masterclasses of thematic games. Like they are just so immersive. I think someone on the Dice Tower said this is Star Wars in the box and Lord of the Rings in a box, and it's so true. Like they are genius games for how they transport you into the world of the game. Like there are some little mechanical things that maybe I don't love, but this is a game that if I had to play 10 more times, I would be really happy about it. And I think I would enjoy it more each time. So
Cool. Well, we'll see what happens next podcast with games 11 to 20.
and I'm third pick. Oh, not so sure about that one.
Thanks for listening to the Lens and Veil podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Garphill Games. You can follow Garphill Games on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, X, and YouTube. You can also subscribe to our newsletter and join the Garphill Discord server.
When I was on the panel at PlayCon, I was talking about deck builders, and like the Australians were laughing big time. And then they made me say fish and chips, or maybe I put it into a sentence willingly and I realized my mistake, the folly of my ways, the fish and chops.